What the Flux is brought to you by DeLoreanRental.com. If you're looking to rent a DeLorean time machine, DeLorean Rental has you covered. They have time machines all across the United States, the UK, Germany, France, Italy, and adding more cars daily. Check out all of their packages to see what would best fit your event at DeLoreanRental.com or call 708-292-0236.
Great Scott! Great Scott! Great Scott! Great Scott! Great Scott!
All your questions will be answered. Roll tape.
Live from the former Institute of Future Technology in Orlando, Florida, you're listening to What the Flux with your host, Anthony Furtado, Brooke Bromery, Caitlin Larkin, and Eugene Schnee.
Welcome to What the Flux. I'm Caitlin Larkin.
And this is Eugen Schnee.
And we will be your hosts today through this wonderful journey through the movies. No, wait, that's the Great Movie Ride. My bad.
Don't get sued. Don't get sued.
No, Disney, don't come and, take all my money. I don't have any because Corona.
Oh, yeah, Mr. Corona. How's everybody been doing out there? It's been a little tough for everybody.
How are you? How are you doing?
I am doing, I've always been very optimistic about everything. I've always been positive and everything, and try to keep a smile. And, even when life is just full of so many bad things, you always got to come out smiling. It's like Charlie Chaplin said, a day without laughter is a day wasted.
That was beautiful.
Thank you. How are you?
I'm hanging in there. I'm trying. I thought my job was safe.
Oh, no.
I don't, want to talk about, my job directly, but, they tried to keep me as long as they could. So I love them for that. But unfortunately, my services are no longer needed until all of this stuff is over with. So,
well, I guess everybody's going through a really rough time right now, and that's what we're here for. We want to make sure that we can line up the mood a little bit, make sure that we can give a little bit of a reason to smile, and we actually do. And I'm gonna make you smile today too.
Hell yeah.
Hell yeah, that's right. All the little kids out there, remember that. We're actually we have a great show for you guys today. Even with everything that's going on, we always appreciate you tuning in and to listen to us. And this goes today. We have some nice Back to the Future notes and very special reports. So hit it away, Caitlin. And this is our news of the day.
See, what we need is any time that it's time for me to report the news, I wish we had like a soundbite of Huey Lewis and the news or something like that. I don't know. It would seem fitting. I'm going to work on that.
Lame.
No, it's going to be awesome. I'm going to work on that now that I have a lot of time. Anyway, your Back to the Future news for this week, the first week of April 2020. There's not too much going on because of the coronavirus, but Michael J. Fox took some time to go on his Instagram and posted a lot of adorable pictures of his dog, Gus. Apparently, it was Gus's birthday the other day, so
happy birthday, Gus.
If Michael J. Fox and his dog are listening, happy birthday.
In that case, we got a happy birthday, Gus, and we have an official dog translator here.
That was such a dad joke.
It is.
Leah Thompson also posted on her social medias during this time. She put up pictures of her wearing animal print costumes from her days on Dancing with the Stars with the caption, "Here's my audition for the Tiger King Ballet." Tiger King is amazing. If you haven't watched Tiger King, you need to. Not that we condone any of the stuff that those people have done on that show. I want to make that very, very clear. But it's very entertaining. So if you have not watched Tiger King on Netflix, you should.
It's combined with what's if you could say Tiger King in one word, what would it be?
Trash.
Ouch. I was gonna say another nicer word. I was just gonna say
The word is how you describe Tiger King.
Exactly. For those of you who haven't watched it, if you're looking for a good time, just watch it. Otherwise,
if you just need to waste 7 hours, watch Tiger King.
It's got it all. Drama, action, love, mystery.
Murder.
Murder.
But anyway, another cool little thingy from backtothefuture.com, the official website of our favorite movie, Back to the Future. They added a 35th anniversary limited edition. Oh my God, I can talk, I swear. Limited edition 2020 1-ounce silver-proof coin that comes in a Mr. Fusion. It's such a cool display package. It's on their online store. And it's cool because the coin has the image of the DeLorean surrounded by all the lightning bolts and the flames, and it's inscribed with Back to the Future, and it's numbered, and it comes with a certificate of authenticity. It's supposed to come out sometime this month here in April, and it costs approximately $150, but it's really cool.
It's worth it. It's worth it.
And then lastly, this was what kind of took over the internet last week in the Back to the Future world. A gentleman by the name of Kevin Bosch, he, and I assume that this is his wife, I'm sorry if this is incorrect, but they recreated the Back to the Future, the ride. Doing those quarantine at home, I Miss Theme Park rides that everybody's doing with their kids. He took it up, not just a notch, a lot of notches, and killed it. Absolutely killed it with recreating Back to the Future, the ride.
For anyone who's done the ride, I remember the ride many times before it closed down in 2007, and it was just one of those rides that was fascinating, and seeing it obviously him and his family recreated it was just unbelievable.
So good.
Even to the smallest details, you can tell that they really worked hard on this, and that's you gotta I gotta applaud it.
Well, Kevin follows us on Twitter, and we were talking about it, and I was just like, this is the greatest thing I've ever seen. It was very entertaining. So if you actually go to our Facebook page, What the Flux, the podcast, we have the link there if you haven't seen that video yet, but I'm sure you have because
check
it's
it out.
awesome.
Send love to Kevin. He worked hard for this, so he definitely deserves it. And like I said, if you did the ride, you will definitely get some memory flashbacks and all the good stuff. So
nostalgia.
Speaking of nostalgia, did you know that we have a guest today?
We do.
Yes, we do. It's by the name of Mr. Michael J. Kidding.
Oh man, I got real excited.
Yeah, sure. No, it's actually somebody really cool. I'm really, really excited about him. His name is Mr. Brad Gilmore. Now,
Brad Gilmore's coming here.
Sort of. It's the magic of the technology. The
I
future.
The future is
Science.
now. The future is now. The future is now.
No, we actually, Brad's actually a really cool guy, believe it or not. He's actually one of those guys that he's a big Back to the Future fan. You actually you've heard it. You've been following his.
For a little bit, I've been following him. Checking him out.
I started following him because of you.
Yes.
You actually told me about him and his podcast and his knowledge of Back to the Future, and I listened to it. And I was actually really into it. And he knows his stuff. He's actually wrote a book.
Yes, he did.
He wrote a book.
You would think that all of this, would be like rival podcasts. It would be like a West Side Story, the Jets and the Sharks, all that good stuff. Yeah, but no, we love Brad. We love his podcast. If you haven't listened to Brad's podcast, it's just Back to the Future, the podcast. He took, a good name while it was available, man.
What? We got a cool name.
Oh, no, we have a great name, but I'm just saying it's just right to the point.
Oh, there you go. But he just recently wrote this book, and it's actually really cool because it's a book. I think the best way to say this book is it's a book from a fan to the fans, and it's from a fan's perspective of our love and knowledge about these movies that we so much. Practically we're obsessed with.
Yeah.
It's called actually a celebration of the greatest time travel story ever told.
But you know what? I think we got Brad on the line, and I think he's going to tell us about it right now.
Now?
Right
like
now.
now.
Like right now.
Like now.
Like right now.
But now you said now earlier.
Well,
now.
I need to push the button.
Oh, now. Like now. Okay, now. So we're excited about your book, man.
Yeah, no, I'm excited about it too. I mean, here we are. Today's the 3rd, so I'm 11 days away from it officially being released. I've been sending out copies, to people Look at that, 11 days away again.
11 days.
I didn't realize I said that. Yeah, I've been sending out copies to people who purchased them prior. The publisher sent me about 48 copies, so I've been sending stuff out to people who wanted to buy them. It's crazy, man. I never thought that I would have a book out, let alone a book about Back to the Future, and we'd be living in the alternate 1985 whenever it came out.
That's awesome,
Yeah.
man. Good for you. Early congratulations.
Absolutely, congrats. I
Yeah.
could never write a book. I don't even have the attention span to read a book, but I will read your book. I do not have the attention span to read most books.
Yeah, well, thankfully it's an audiobook. I'm more of an audiobook guy too. And I will say that writing a book was probably the worst thing that I've ever had to do creatively. I come from a background of music and hosting and radio and wrestling and all this stuff. And all that other stuff is collaborative, right? So you get to work with people, you get to bounce ideas off of each other, and with a book, you're literally sitting in your room with other books around you, with the movies on, and it's just you and a laptop, and you're just typing away thousands and thousands and thousands of words at a time and hoping that it makes some sort of cohesive sense.
That's awesome.
Well, clearly it did because it's coming out.
Well, that doesn't mean it's made sense. It just means it made enough sense for someone to publish it. But yeah, it's great.
That's all that matters. Whatever. You did something good. Don't worry about it.
Well, first and foremost, I don't know if you've listened to all of our stuff yet, but if you listened to our first episode, we all went around telling our Back to the Future love stories, and we would love to hear yours. What made you fall in love with Back to the Future so much so that you've now written this book?
Yeah, it's a great question. So to age myself, I was born after all the movies had already been released. So I was born in the early 1990s, 1992. So we're coming up on the 30th anniversary of Back to the Future Part 3. So I discovered these movies later, obviously, than when they came out. First film that came out in 85, I didn't watch these movies till like 99 almost. And so I was 7 years old. I did the same thing that I did every day when I got home from school is I'd turn on the Disney Channel. That's just what I did. And back then, the Disney Channel on like Friday nights would show movies, and they wasn't always Disney movies. It wasn't always their original movies. It was just a random movie sometimes, and they were doing a Back to the Future marathon. And I didn't know anything about Back to the Future other than it sounded cool. Like the name sounds cool, so I'll check it out. So I ended up watching Back to the Future Part 1, and I'm like, wow, this is crazy. Like, this is a great movie. And I remember the next morning waking up, and my mom was making me breakfast, and I was talking about this movie, Back to the Future, and I said, can we go to Blockbuster and rent, Part 2 and Part 3? I got to see these movies. So she took me to Blockbuster. I think they only had Part 2 at the time, something like that. But anyway, that was when I first saw it. And I remember going to my friends in school on Monday and being like, hey, guys, have y'all ever heard of this movie, Back to the Future? No one had ever heard of it. And it was just of the time, like, we're all 7. So, other than The Lion King and Toy Story, our filmography was rather short. So I just remember then that was when I kind of got obsessed with it and watching it over and over and over again. And I think that the appeal to me was, so I'm the youngest of my siblings. My oldest brother is 23 years older than I am, which is quite the age gap. And my brother was born in the 60s, my other one in the 70s, my sister in the 80s, and me in the 90s. So we have this real big age gap between me and my siblings and even my parents. My dad was born in the 40s, my mom in the 50s. So for some reason, this movie just kind of made me feel closer to their generation. It was about the 80s and being a teenager in the 80s, which both my brothers were. My sister was born in the 80s. Then it went back to the 50s where my dad was a teenager. My mom was born then. So I don't know. It just made me feel more connected to the family, and that I understood more about how they were and what they liked and what those time periods were about. So I think that was another appeal, other than it being the greatest movie ever made and a perfect adventure story. There were these other themes that definitely drew me closer to the franchise.
I definitely agree with that. It's amazing that how one of the things that I love about Back to the Future, especially speaking with people that from different ages, like yourself. I mean, I actually was lucky enough to see the movie when it was actually in the theater.
That's just because you old.
Yeah, that's
right.
Wait, let me put my walker. Okay.
Yeah.
But it's really cool listening to people's perspective of the movie when they first saw it from different age groups. Like you said, like, in your case, they were like talking about this movie and everything that came out after that. From my perspective, I can tell you that when I saw it, I can tell you that nobody. I mean, there's one thing like I can. Are you familiar with the show, the one in ABC, the one with the kid in the 80s, the
Goldbergs.
Goldbergs?
Yeah,
Yeah.
for sure.
And I don't know if you ever saw the episode where they were actually seeing Back to the Future, or even in Stranger Things, they also did it too, where you see the people's reaction in the movie seeing this, and it's one of those things that you never forget. Like till this day, I'm 41, I still remember being in the theater with my parents and everybody, because technically, as weird as it sounds, it was a family day, and we're watching this movie, seeing Doc Brown say, the words that he was saying, but it's such an amazing. I love. That's one of my favorite things to talk to people about when Back to the Future is hearing those reactions from different age groups, and then you listen to yours now. It's amazing how a kid from my age, from my perspective, and hearing from you as a kid from your perspective, it's even though we're not at different times, the same reaction was there. Like, what is this? It's a cool title. I need to know more.
I mean, yeah, that's essentially what it was. And then when you watch the movie, it's one of those films that is just so exciting from the very beginning to the end. There's no lulls in Back to the Future. There's no like, oh man, they could have cut 5-6 minutes out of this movie. It was perfectly put together. It was perfectly written, perfectly casted. And I know this is a Back to the Future podcast. I do my own, and I've written this book, and we all gush about the films. But even objectively speaking, I have a lot of friends in Hollywood who are all movie critics, and they rank this film, Back to the Future, up there as a perfect movie. Like it's up there. It's up there with Godfather Part 2. I mean, it's one of those movies. It's just a perfect movie, and you can't think of anything that you would change. And I don't know if there's ever been a more fun movie from beginning to end. And that's why I think it doesn't matter what age group you are when you watch it. I got to watch it, I don't know, 3 weeks ago maybe, before the world was shut down, with my nephews who were 10 and 8, and they had never seen the movie either. So I got to sit and experience it with them for the first time. And even them, people who are born post-smartphone, right? I mean, the smartphone was already invented when they were alive. Even they find this movie from the 1980s appealing because it's just timeless. There's no other really great way to describe it other than it's timeless. And it's a story that will always resonate of, if I had a time machine and I went back, what would happen? And I think that, even the relationship with Marty and Doc, although people think it's weird now when you look at it with 2020 goggles on, that thought never came to my mind. The relationship with his, yeah. I mean, here's the thing is they did the comic book series where they said that, they met because Marty needed like an amplifier or needed a part for his amplifier for his guitar or whatever. That can be the story. I don't really care what the story is. I never had the thought, and maybe Caitlin and Eugene, y'all had it. I never had the thought of how did these people meet.
I never thought about it. I never wanted to know. And it's cool that the comic books covered that, but I just never had the desire. It didn't matter.
It didn't really matter. I mean, I used to hang out with old guys all the time in the 80s. And
God, dude.
That's another show. But anyway, but it really, you don't even think about that, really. You just go with it. And because, as you said, as soon as you watch the movie, the opening scenes, all you're seeing is all these clocks. And then suddenly this kid that comes out of nowhere, and then he's just jamming guitar, and you're like, oh my God, what am I looking at? And then again, those things are so secondary that you don't even care. And of course, once you receive the DeLorean, that's everything about life changes. I mean, as soon as you saw that car. So
yeah, and what's fun about the movies, and I think is why you can always go back and watch them and watch them and watch them and watch them, is because in the 1980s, I think it started probably with the first Indiana Jones movie. They started implementing these Easter eggs and these little things that you could go back and see again if you missed it the first time. And Back to the Future is full of them. It's full. I mean, the entire trilogy, but especially the first one: the Lone Pine, the Twin Pine, the Peabody, the Spaceman from Pluto. All the little things that you can go back and see that have changed. And all the small Easter eggs, even in the beginning opening shot where you see that in the opening shot of all the clocks in Doc's lab, and you see Harold Lloyd, who was an actor from I think the 1920s from a movie called Safety Last, and he's holding on to the clock, and you see that in the opening shot, foreshadowing what we'll see in the climax of the film. I mean, those are the things that Bob and all the people who made the movie, they were thinking about this. They were thinking about repeat viewings for people, and also all the lines that pay off. Everything that is said in the movie pays off, except for one thing. One thing that is dropped that is never really paid off is Claudia Wells, who plays Jennifer Parker in the first movie. Her and Marty are walking after Marty gets rejected by Huey Lewis for the dance. They're walking, and he's talking about this fear of rejection. And she goes, "You got to send this tape into the record companies. You're really good." He never sends the tape into the record companies. We never really find out what happens with the tape from the record company. That's the only thing I can ever think of that doesn't pay off.
It's really funny you say that, because I've been, watching lots of theory videos on YouTube as of lately.
Mm-hmm.
And there was one that said at the very last scene when, Marty wakes up and he sees his brother and sister at the breakfast table, he's holding an envelope. And apparently that's the envelope that he's sending into the record company with the tape inside.
That's true.
Oh, really? You know what? I never even noticed he had an envelope in his hand. Wow.
Yeah,
See, look, I'm still learning. That's the thing about this movie, is you always learn something. I had no idea about that.
It's a great video, and I was talking to the guy that made it. Oh my God, why am I forgetting the name of it right now? But it's like script versus or screenplay versus I sent it to you in the group chat.
I got it.
Oh,
let me look.
I'll edit this whole part out.
Yeah, I got to check that out. You got to send that over to me. But that's the thing.
Yeah.
That's the thing about the movie is that there's always something that you're going to learn about it. And reading Cassine Gaines' book, We Don't Need Roads, which I was actually talking to Cassine earlier today, and even the Ultimate Visual History of Back to the Future that was put out in 2015, which is a great textbook about the films. You can read those, you can watch the movie 100 times, and you're never going to know every single thing about the movies. And that's what's fun. I mean, even if you go in Back to the Future Part 2, you see the Easter egg of Roger Rabbit's there in the Blast from the Past store. You see that. I mean, even just the small things are like Family Ties is on one of the monitors or something like that. There's always these small things that you can always pick up on, and that just lends itself to the rewatchability of these movies.
Yeah, so we found the video. It's called Screenplay versus Final Film.
Okay.
It's incredible.
I'll go watch that. I'll check that out because I've never heard anybody else talk about what happened to the record company thing. So I would like to know if that's official or not. And that's the thing about the movies. Again, it's just they're so rewatchable.
What, in your opinion, what's the one thing? I mean, obviously, this is a really hard question to answer, but in your opinion, what's the one thing that stands out of all three movies? What's the one thing that stands out for you?
What's the one thing that stands out? Wow. That is a difficult question. I think that the one thing that stands out as far as, do you mean like visually on the film, or like a scene or something like that?
Correct, yes.
Oh, well, I have plenty of favorite scenes from the movies. I actually have a favorite line from the movie. So when I'm not doing a Back to the Future podcast or torturing myself by writing a book about it, I do professional wrestling commentary for a show called Reality of Wrestling. And in wrestling, it's like a time-honored tradition where you just steal things and pass them off as your own. So what I always would, I just steal movie quotes all the time for the broadcast. And my favorite line from Back to the Future, and it's an odd one, it's an obscure one, but it's my favorite line. We're seeing Marty wakes up in the Baines residence. He has the interaction with his mom. She tells him to put his pants back on. They come down. They're watching television at dinner, and his mom grabs his thigh. He gets up. He's like, "Okay, yeah, y'all been great. I gotta go." And when he leaves, his future grandfather says he's an idiot. It comes from upbringing. His parents are probably idiots too. That's my favorite line from the movies. I love that line so much. And I've said it so many times on commentary. And I remember actually the first time I said it on commentary, we had a wrestler with us. His name was Sean Hendricks. And we were talking again before the show in the backstage. and he had mentioned that he had never seen Back to the Future, and he was
wow.
my age. So this was like an unforgivable sin at this point for me. Hey, man, we're the same age. Like you've had to have seen Back to the Future at some point. So he said he hadn't. I said, okay, look, this is what I want you to do. In your match tonight, I'm going to make as many Back to the Future references as I humanly possibly can. I'm going to fit as many as I can in, and I want you to watch your match back, then watch the movie, and then go watch your match again and see how many that you can pick up on. So it was like a fun game that we did. I mean, I had a list. I literally, all my commentary notes were just lines from the movie. And I'm like, how can I work this in? You know, I said, oh, he's a great communicator. And then my broadcast partner says, you mean like Ronald Reagan? I'm like, Ronald Reagan, the actor? What? And so we were working stuff like that in. I even, when he rolled them up for the 3 count at one point, I said that was a Pepsi perfect roll up right there. I mean, so there was all kinds of stuff.
Oh my God. See, stuff like that would actually make me watch wrestling. And it's sad that Anthony's not here right now because Anthony is such a huge wrestling nerd. He'd probably be loving this right now.
Yeah, there's actually a wrestler right now in the WWE. He works for the developmental brand in Orlando, Florida, called NXT, and his name is Kushida. He's a wrestler from Japan, but he comes out dressed as Marty McFly, and he looks at his watch like it's Back to the Future, and it's pretty cool.
I did not know that.
Oh my God! See, my brother's a huge wrestling fan, so when he came onto the scene, he showed me that, and I'm also really good friends with Mr. Scotty Too Hottie. Hi, Scott.
Oh yeah, Scott Taylor.
Yes. So
Oh my God.
yeah, I can't believe we've never seen that before. He's pulling up a picture right now.
Yeah, look at that.
That's pretty sweet. It is pretty sweet. But yeah, so that was like my favorite line from the movie. But I don't know. There's so many great scenes. I don't know how you really choose one. I also like though when Marty and Doc are in the 1955 Hill Valley High School. Marty just tried to get Lorraine and George to get together, and then he and Doc are talking about how you know his mom has the hots for him or whatever, and then Doc points to the poster of the Enchantment Under the Sea dance. He goes, "Look, it's a rhythmic ceremonial ritual." And I always love that it was a rhythmic ceremonial ritual. Of course, that's how Doc Brown describes the dance.
Yeah. It's the brilliant writing. It really is.
Writing.
It's just so incredible and so smart and so funny. And it's one of the things that's just so charming about these films.
Oh, and speaking of all those, obviously you're very passionate about these films and all that stuff, and it has obviously made you write this book. What can you tell us about the book? What's it about?
So, I mean, the book is called Back from the Future, a celebration of the greatest time travel story ever told. And I wanted to write a book. So when the idea came, I have a friend named Ken Knapsack who wrote a book called Why We Love Star Wars. And I was like, man, this is great. And his book was really about a fan's point of view. It was really a passion project for the film, for the saga. And I said, there's some great books about Back to the Future out there. Like I said, Cassine Gaines' book, which really details the entire making of the trilogy. There's the Ultimate Visual History, which does the same, and it goes a little bit into the animated series and the ride. I was like, but I really want to talk about things that the fans talk about. So when I had the idea for Back from the Future, excuse me, I said, okay, I want to cover how the films got here, obviously, because if a layman picks up the book, they're not as hardcore as the three of us are. They would need to know more about the background of the story. But I said, I want to talk about these theories. I want to talk about, why did Old Man Biff disappear in that deleted scene in Back to the Future Part 2? What did that really mean? Why was that why did they take it out of the movie? Why should they have left it out of the movie? What was the story behind that? So I have a whole chapter called American Time Story, Old Man Biff, where we literally, for an entire chapter, thousands and thousands of words, look at that scene, that deleted scene from Back to the Future Part 2, and discuss why it was important, why it wasn't important, what happened, why did he disappear, all the stuff that goes around it, and why I think that it was a really pivotal scene that they cut out. I do stuff like that. I wanted to talk more about the animated series, which I don't think gets a lot of love. The Institute of Future Technology is a chapter where I talk about the history of the ride. And then my favorite part of the book is the series that I call the Almanac. And I look at the best inventions from Doc Brown, aside from the time machine, of course, his little inventions from the films. I look at the best side characters that we get out of our main 4 or 5 with Doc, Marty, George, Lorraine, and Biff. Outside of those, who are the best characters in the films? Because there's plenty. of characters in Back to the Future that you can talk about and go into their history, their backlog, their story. I do all of that. I just really wanted to have a book about a fan's perspective. I even take a whole chapter talking about the day that we all three rejoiced, Future Day, back in 2015. All the things that occurred on that day, all the things that I did. Like I almost had the police called on me on Future Day in a Back to the Future related activity that I was doing, and I go into that in the book. So it was really it was a fan's look at these three films, at the comics, at the game, at the ride, the animated series, just all things Back to the Future, and just really going into theories and just why I love these films and why I think that they stood the test of time.
That's amazing.
That's awesome. I've actually never been so excited to read a book. I'm so stoked for this.
I personally love reading, and I always appreciate books that are made from fans to fans. Because yes, you have, as you said, I have read the book from Cassine Gaines, We Don't Need Roads, which is an unbelievable book. For those of you who are listening, highly recommend it. I've seen documentaries and everything, but it's always done by people that, let's be honest, it's professionals in the industry. Your book I'm excited for because it's one of those things. It's almost like if you and me were at a bar drinking and we're talking about Back to the Future.
Exactly. I mean that's the way I'm not a professional writer. I have written things, for online websites and local papers and stuff like that over my career, but never a professional writer. I don't know anything about how to write a book, which is funny that they said go ahead and write one, but I didn't know anything about it. So this is literally just my thoughts. It's essentially a journal. It's a series of essays that I had about Back to the Future. Of course, there's the research heavy parts. Of course, I feel like you had to include how the Bobs got together, how the idea came about, who they pitched it to, the old spaceman from Pluto story. I wanted to include all that because those are stories that I love about Back to the Future. I wanted to share with people, but also I wanted to get into stuff that I just wanted to talk about. That as a fan, these are things that I thought about. These are things that I wanted to talk to other people about, and these are things I feel like should be celebrated more. I feel like we celebrate the movies, absolutely, and they should be celebrated. But the animated series is so good. The ride I never got to ride, but just living through that, living it through the footage. I know y'all think no, I didn't. I was supposed to go. My sister was going to take me as a part of like a graduation thing. She was going to book the trip. We were going to go out Orlando, do the ride, and then I think it was a couple years before graduation or something. They shut the ride down, so I never made it to the finish line on that one. But I thought that ride footage was so great. I know y'all both work in theme parks, right? Or someone works in theme parks, right? Okay, yeah.
At some point in time or another, work
y'all
for
got to ride the ride?
I actually got to ride the ride before I ever moved to Florida. The two times I was on it, one was in 1996 and I think the other was 2002. Were the only two times I got to go on the ride because I didn't live in Florida at the time. I was still living on Long Island in New York.
I got to do the ride when with my family we came here to Orlando for visiting in the 90s. But then when I moved here in 2005, of course, living in Orlando and working with the theme parks, and obviously I got to do it a couple of times. And let me tell you something, that when I used to go there, it was kind of funny because every time I go to Universal, it's like I have to do Back to the Future ride. Like that was the first ride I had to do and the last ride I had to do before I left. That was like my little tradition. And I also got to do it on the day that they closed the ride on 2007. I got to do the ride when they closed it as well. And it was definitely a bit nostalgic because you get to know these people. A lot of the team members, as Universal employees are called, they will recognize you, and it's like, oh, you're here for your last ride, right? And I'm like, yep. And it was very, very emotional because obviously we all knew that it was being the last time to do this ride that we loved so much from the movie that we cared for so much. And that's when you really, really consider it. Like, this was just not a ride. This was an experience. And we're actually going to be doing a show, which you might actually find interesting, where we're actually going to be bringing a team member that actually worked on the ride, so they can tell us a little bit more about the ride itself, but more about the behind the scenes of it. How was it to actually run that ride?
Yeah, that would be interesting. I would like to hear that because so for me, and I hope this doesn't offend y'all too much being Universal people, but I've always been a Disney guy. I've always been a Disney Parks guy. I love Disneyland, Disney World, and
Okay, man, I can do that Disney.
okay, good. Okay, cool. So I mean, I've always been a Disney person, so I never got to go over there to Orlando, to the Universal Studios in Orlando or in California. And here's my beef with the Universal parks. I've never been to one, but I have a beef. My beef is it seems that Disney is big on holding those traditional rides. They always want to keep them together, whether it be It's a Small World, Pirates of the Caribbean, those classic rides from the 1950s and 60s when the parks first started opening. They keep them. They're classics. You don't get rid of them. I feel like Universal, they get rid of all their rides. They always are revamping and going to a different thing. Everyone loves Jaws. They get rid of Jaws. We love Jurassic Park the way it is. Too bad you get Jurassic World. We love Back to the Future. We think Simpsons is going to hold up a little bit longer. I'm like, come on, man. Like, let me see. E.T.'s gone, I think, out of one of the parks. That's my beef. That's my only beef with Universal.
Yeah, no, we feel you there because that's definitely something that we've all, thought and complained about.
Yeah.
But what can you do?
I mean, E.T.'s still here.
Yes, E.T.'s still here, thank God.
Like it or not.
I love that damn ride. That smell.
I hate that damn ride.
The best, and it should be bottled and sold. I would wear it every day as a perfume.
Listen, if Steven Spielberg is listening to this podcast, which of course we all know he is.
Absolutely.
Naturally. I apologize, but I hate that ride. I do. I hate that ride because E.T. can never say my name. At the end of the ride, E.T.'s supposed to say your name. And let me tell you something. I feel a personal vendetta against me because E.T. always either doesn't say my name right or he doesn't say my name. And every time I look at him, he's just like, what? Well, I have something very personal, and everybody talks about this damn smell. All it smells is like tourist. That's all it smells like. No, it doesn't.
It smells like magic and nostalgia.
And tourist.
You shut your mouth.
Regardless, whenever you come to Orlando, we'll be honored to get you into all the good rides and E.T.
Yes, I look forward to it.
Sure.
I definitely look forward to it.
We will be your personal tour guides and hosts for Universal Studios to take you around, and then we'll take you to Simpsons so you can have a minute to cry a little bit of what it was. And of course, we'll take you to the DeLorean and the train that they still got there, and hopefully, if we're lucky enough, we might even see Doc Brown walking around.
Yeah.
Hey man,
so when is your book?
Say again.
When is your book coming out?
April the 14th, the book is out. It's going to be available hardcover, so limited edition hardcover, which is really cool. Also, audiobook is going to be out on the same day, and the Kindle and the Apple iBook. I mean, so you can get it Apple Books, Amazon.com, BarnesandNoble.com, IndieBound.com. You can buy it directly from me. You can give me a shout on Twitter at Brad Gilmore. I'll get it over to you with an autograph in it as well. Yeah. So I mean, and the thing is, the reason why the book came about even was I was similar to yourselves. I was a podcaster, and I'm a radio host by trade. That's what I do, and I listen to podcasts religiously, and I was listening to this Seinfeld podcast at the time called Signcast, original name, and I was like, man, I would love to listen to like a Back to the Future show. So I went to the Apple store, and I was like, is there anything Back to the Future related? And there was nothing. There was no Back to the Future podcast, and I was like, that's crazy. And I was like, man, I really wanted to listen to a Back to the Future podcast. And then I was like, wait, hold on. What if I make the Back to the Future podcast? I could do that, right? I mean, I have all the equipment, I have the knowledge, I have the know-how, I have the will, I have the determination to do so. And so I started the Back to the Future, the podcast in 2015 to culminate with the 30th anniversary of the films, to culminate with Future Day and all that great stuff. And that's how I even got here. I've been doing the podcast for 5 years, over 6 seasons. We've had all kinds of great guests on. Claudia Wells, who I mentioned before. Jeffrey Weissman's been on multiple times. Harry Waters Jr., who played Marvin Berry in the movies. Crispin Glover was on the most recent season of Back to the Future, the podcast. Got to talk to Crispin over the phone for a little bit. That was awesome. And it's really been a super fun thing to do. I mean, it started off as a passion project, the podcast did. And now, I mean, I've had, I think, 1.5 million downloads on the podcast. and it's only growing. It's only getting bigger. I've gotten to crank out a lot of shows since I've been sitting at home doing nothing, like most people are right now. I've gotten to do a lot of shows from here and get prepared for the release of the book and really count down. So, I mean, I'm a big Back to the Future fan, as are you, and anybody listening to this show. You're going to love the book because it's just more of what we're talking about now, just in literary format and thousands of painstaking words that I wrote on pages of paper.
Well, that sounds incredible, Brad. Thank you so much for coming and chatting with us. And where can people find you online if they want to, reach out to you and all that good stuff?
So I'm on all social media, pretty easy to find, at Brad Gilmore. That's Instagram, Twitter, Facebook. I don't have a TikTok, and I refuse to have one. But anywhere else you can find me on social media that way. And you can find out about the book. Just go to Amazon.com. Back from the Future is the name of the book, so you can check it out there. And just stay in contact with me. Check out Back to the Future, the podcast, which is on every podcast that you can find, every podcast store. Also, you can check out me and Booker T, who's a WWE Hall of Famer and a Back to the Future fan. We do a show called The Hall of Fame on ESPN Radio. You can check it out on our YouTube channel as well at Reality of Wrestling. So that's where you can find me, follow me, shout me out. Tell me if I'm crazy for that being my favorite line from the movies. Tell me what your favorite scene is. I just want to talk more. I just think it's a great line. That's all I'm saying. It's a great line.
I think
but yeah, that's where you can find me.
I think it's amazing. Brad, it's definitely been a pleasure talking to you. You definitely talking to you makes me really want to read this book more, because obviously you have a lot of passion, a lot of knowledge of these movies, and I can't wait to see from a fan's perspective your stories, your theories, your craziness, and the fact that, like you said, the only thing that I don't agree with you, man, is that you say you're not a writer, but guess what, my friend? You are a writer now. You have a book coming out that makes you a writer, and you have yourself 2 fans here.
Hey, if you put your mind to it, you can accomplish anything, Eugene.
Now, where was that heard from? Where have I heard that from? Well said, my friend. Take care, my friend. Ladies and gentlemen, the amazing, the
incomparable, the multi-talented.
The multi-talented.
There we go.
Brad Gilmore, thank you so much again.
All right, thanks, Caitlin. Thanks, Eugene. Y'all take care.
You
take
care.
Too.
Bye-bye.
Well, folks, that's pretty much it. That's the end of another great show. Caitlin, how was that?
I think that went pretty well, if I do say so myself.
I'm just gonna give it a 10 out of 10.
Yeah.
Why not? Why not? We'll get that. What about all the audience out there? Especially, we want to thank Mr. Brad Gilmore again. Thank you so much for your knowledge and just great stories. And it's just it's always fun to talk to other fans.
It really is, and we're so excited for the book.
And speaking of fans, I mean, if there's anybody out there that wants to hit us a shout out. Just a message, or you just
actually, it's a good thing you brought this up. So the first episode we talked about our Back to the Future love stories, and we want to hear from you guys. Our email is actually whatthefluxpod@gmail.com. If you have topics you think we should discuss, or if you want to send us your Back to the Future love story, essentially, we'll definitely read those.
What's the email again?
Whatthefluxpod, POD, @gmail.com is our email. But of course, if you want to follow us on all social media.
Do we have a social media?
We have so many little social medias out there.
What is it?
We have, of course, our Facebook page, which is just What the Flux, the podcast, out on Facebook. So if you search that, you'll find us. And then we also have an Instagram account, WhatTheFlux_pod. And you can also find us on Twitter with the same handle, WhatTheFlux_pod.
Wow, we're so fancy.
I know, we are so fancy. And also, if you are listening to us on Apple Podcasts, please do us a favor. Give us a 5-star rating and a review. We want to know what you think of us. Even if you hate us, we want to know. No, please don't hate us.
But if you hate us, I mean, don't
let us know.
Let us know, but not that bad.
Yeah, at least give us 2 stars.
Nah.
Don't just give us 1 star.
In a sad face.
Oh, God.
You guys suck. No, we do this show with love. We do this show because we love these movies, and we just want to, it's like I said, it's from fans to other fans, and we just want to make sure that these movies are always preserved. We want to make sure that these movies are always remembered with love and everything, and it's because of you guys, fans out there.
That's right. So we want to hear from you.
Please do. Other than that, folks, my name is Eugene. I always thank everybody, but I especially want to give a shout out to my right here, Mrs. Caitlin. Thank you so much for
Oh, well, thank you, Eugene.
Also, shout out to Anthony and Brooke. We can't wait to see you guys soon.
Yes, please. We miss you.
Miss you guys. And other than that, thank you guys. And
Whether it be in the future or the past, we'll see you next time. Bye.
bye.
So why don't you make like a tree and get out of here?
All right, bye-bye.
Thank you for listening to What the Flux. You can find us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter at WhatTheFlux_pod. Please subscribe to us wherever you get your podcasts and give us a 5-star rating. And be sure to recommend us to your other time-traveling friends.
Hasta la bye-bye.